Okay, I think we're gone.
Okay, welcome back everyone to the Mancast Sessions, podcast number 2. You're joined by myself, Anthony Hazel, and Gavin Steele. Following on from the last podcast, I think we both agreed that it was probably a little bit manic. Certainly did a lot of subject swapping and never really got any focus to it. So what we want to do today is we're going to have just a specific topic, and we're going to talk about
Star Wars.
Now, you wait a whole year, 2 years since The Force Awakens, and that day then becomes today. And I can't tell you, all day, just really stoked and really excited about what's going to happen, and like I really don't know what's going to happen, and I'm really cool and really excited about it. How do you feel?
I am hopeful. I was really disappointed with the first one because I was expecting more to see more of Luke, and he was in there 2 minutes right at the end, and that was such a painful cliffhanger.
Really?
Yeah.
You see, you and I have spoken about this on many occasions, and actually The Force Awakens for me, although it does mimic very much the original Star Wars film, and it does, you know, a lot of the cinematography is quite similar, you know, the Death Star, the Death Planet, or whatever they call it, you know, it is very similar. I do get that, but I think this is what they're trying to do. It's an ever revolving cycle of events, you know. It's a bit like fashion, really. You know, one day, you know, you go through a spell and it always comes back to where you started. It's the same as that. It's just a completely revolving story. I don't think it ever ends. And it is, you know, the classic good versus evil.
Yeah, I mean, it touches on a lot of archetypes. And before we get into our disagreements of that film, constructive disagreements.
We're not going to have a punch up.
They're just different viewpoints. Let's get into how you got into them, because obviously there's age gap between us, and so we've had different childhoods and different introductions to this franchise.
Just so that our listeners can know, I'm currently 39 years old, and my co-pilot is 27. So there is a bit of a difference, you know. You wouldn't know it to look at us. I'm definitely better looking than Gavin is.
Not aged well.
You wouldn't know. Gavin's definitely not aging well. But, you know, for me, you know, Star Wars was a massive, massive part of my childhood. I mean, you know, the toys, it was back in the days when there wasn't iPads, there wasn't regular access to internet, computers, you know. I mean, I think, crikey, back then I had an Amstrad CPC 464, was one of the ones you used to have to put the tapes in, and you push a button and it made that for about 3 hours, and then you got to play like some shitty game for about 10 minutes before it crashed.
That's amazing.
And you had to sit there and go through it all again. So yeah, computers weren't a big thing. So toys and being, you know, involved in toys, Action Man, you know, these sorts of things, Action Force, as I used to play with, and Star Wars. I mean, this was a huge part of who I was when I was a kid. You know, my dad was a big kid. We used to play for hours on end with all the various different toys, the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing fighter, you know, lots and lots of absolutely fantastic memories. And the films, do you know, I probably didn't know what they were all about, but they just reached out. They were just good films to watch. I enjoyed them. I didn't get as much from the films as I do now.
Yeah. I
revisit and I learn more about each film every time I watch it. It's like they're layered. Like every time you watch, you learn a little bit more.
I think that's a recurring thing with some of the best films, is that even as a child that can't comprehend fully the complexity or even some of the language or the script, you still are drawn to it. You're still enthralled by it. It's still feeding your imagination, and you know, the storytelling is succinct enough that you can get it at a small age, but there's, like you said, there's layers to it. So for an adult with an adult's eyes and an adult's comprehensions, there's depth to it that you would have never even perceived at a young age.
Without a doubt. And you know, it's a lot of my earliest memories excuse me, you know, were just just really playing with the toys more than the films. I have more of a recollection of the toys, and as a 39-year-old man, I knew I had these toys. Still got them, in fact. And when you open up that treasure trove of artifacts from when you were a kid, and you see these figures, and you remember role playing with these figures and being immersed in the world, like my imagination going mad. It's almost what's wrong with today's young people. They don't have these tools for building imagination.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, obviously the prevalence of technology with today's youth is going to limit a lot of imagination, because maybe less so for my generation and more so for your generation and older generations. It's that really you had to develop your imagination in order to fill your time, in order to stimulate yourself and have fun.
Yeah, and it was just just getting these toys back out. I mean, I still am in possession of an original Millennium Falcon, X-Wing fighter. I've got the transporter. I've got over 150 figures. Unfortunately, they're not boxed, because if they were, I'd be screaming and laughing, because they're retailing for like 50 quid a figure. But yeah, just some really fantastic memories of being a child in this era, and watching these films, and just you watch the film and then you almost have that urge to go and get these the Millennium Falcon out and pretend that you're flying it through. I remember it had a little handle on the bottom, and I used to run through the house, like wow, pew, 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 making all the noises, and it was just classic memories. I mean, I don't think there's another single franchise that I can pick out from my youth that touched me the way Star Wars did. It was very important, very, very important.
I imagine for younger generations, I guess Harry Potter would come close or be a similar sort of parallel.
Yeah.
But given how Star Wars does hold such a soft spot to you and its nostalgic value, let's talk your reaction to the prequels.
Yeah, I think initially when I found out they were doing the prequels, obviously I revisited the original trilogy, which would now be films 4, 5 and 6. And, I was very defensive of these films and the quality of them. And, it was, as much as I was excited that there was going to be new material and we were going to get to learn a little bit more about the characters and the backstories, and, and it was going to be exciting to open up these doorways and these ideas. I think I was quite defensive initially of the original trilogy because I loved it so much and it played such a massive part of my childhood. There wasn't a day that went by when I wasn't, running around the house, playing with these figures, playing with these toys, pretending I was the characters. It really did. It was a special part of my childhood. And I think when the prequels come out, I was, obviously in young adulthood by the time. I mean, when did they come out? They were 2000, weren't they? No, they can't have been that. They can't be that old.
Yeah, they might be.
Yeah, well, we'll carry on. Tell us about your memories.
Well, okay. So for me, my stepdad got me into Star Wars. I remember he introduced me and my little brother to the VHS original trilogy, and like you said, instantly gripped by the story. Obviously enamoured with Luke, and you want to be the hero yourself, don't you? And embody that and personify that. And
it was 1999.
Yeah,
so very close to 2000. That was a stab in the dark, but yeah, fair enough. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Like, I didn't even think it was as old as 99.
Yeah, very happy. Yeah. That's a good guess. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I had that introduction, and then not too long after.
Did you say Betamax or VHS?
VHS.
You see, I was on Betamax, dude.
Yeah,
this is how old it goes. You know what I mean?
I mean, so for people I know, VHS is some sort of lost technology.
But you want to see Betamax then? I mean, that was crikey. We're going back to cave paintings with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but then only a few years later, they did is it the digital re-release of Star Wars, and they brought the original trilogies back out in the cinemas.
They did, and they put all the extra bits in,
and I was obsessed for a while as a child, and they did the Tazos and the Pogs.
yeah.
You know, those classic 90s sort of hobbies.
You see, the problem is that when I started out with the original stuff, you get so defensive of it.
Yeah,
you know, and it's almost like this is a, you know, when you see new stuff come out, you're almost like, no, I can't play with that because that's not the original stuff. I've got the original stuff. I don't need this rubbish. Yeah. And when they started to re-release the figures, you know, you found yourself like scrutinising everything. You'd look at them and go, oh, they're not as good as the ones I've got. So I got very defensive over the first generation of Star Wars toys. So subsequently, the stuff that was released after that, you know, I was like, no, I'm not having any of that.
I consider myself really fortunate as well, because this is the 90s, so internet shopping's not really kicked off. So, so now you've got access to everything, but before you had to get to a physical store, you know, and you were limited to what was available in your area. And nowhere where we lived could you get the green lightsaber, Luke's green lightsaber. And I don't remember why I got it, whether it was a birthday or something, but my parents had gone to Reading and shopped in Toys R Us, so obviously a much better range of toys, and they got me a green lightsaber, and I was the coolest fucking kid around with the green lightsaber. That made me the absolute daddy.
It does, and you wear it with pride, and you walk around, and you can transcend yourself into those. Into your memories almost, you know what I mean, and become part of the characters. I mean, I was always, as a young boy, you know, I've always been sort of a big lad, so I missed out on a lot of the dressing up stuff. You know, like my friends would be running around in, you know, Superman costumes, and you know, my mum always used to get me the Darth Vader mask, and sort of make me a little cloak to go around, because nothing ever fitted me. You know, I was always a bit too big, but yeah, it was absolutely fantastic memories. But I mean, when I actually heard and read, you know, the story cards, because I followed very heavily the Phantom Menace, you know, it just looked fantastic. You know, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, we're going to get to meet more characters, see a bit more of the universe, you know, delve into backstories. You know, very, 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 very happy, very excited. I think the film came out like 99, which would have been, what's that, 17 years, so I would have been, what, 20, 22, 23, something like that. 33, 22, yeah, 22, 23. So unfortunately at this point, you know, I was busy shagging women and getting off my head on all sorts of things I shouldn't have been doing, but so I never really got, you know, back into it in a big way. It wasn't until I had kids that, you know, I wanted them to revisit it with me.
Yeah.
You know, and when we got back into, you know, watching these prequels, I think initial reaction with the first one was, what the hell was that dude with the big ears, man, that made those noises? Was it Jar Jar Binks? I mean, all I wanted to do was like jump in the TV screen and throat punch this character to death. Really hated him. And for me, for the first film, I didn't enjoy it because of his character. It was very annoying. But on the flip side, you know, Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson, I just want more of that character. You know, I really bought into his character. Very good, well played, but just wanted to know more. They just, you know, the kid, obviously he dies at the end of Phantom Menace, and obviously Ewan McGregor then, you know, obviously becomes the Jedi Knight, and eventually then starts training the young Anakin, which, you know, I thought the casting actually was pretty good for the little boy. You know, I know he got a lot of bad press for that film. A lot of bad press. I actually thought he was all right. You know, a bit of innocence there. I thought he was all right. You know, I've read some of the people have said about him, and I think some of it's really, really unfair, because, you know, he's a boy, for one, and I think he did all right. No,
I think it depends what set of eyes I want to look at the film through. I mean, 99, what am I, 10 or 11? I never had a problem with the prequels at that age. A lot of fun, answered a lot of questions, really exciting, loads of action, really enjoyed them.
And the CGI was top notch.
Yeah, and
You know, it still is
I would
now.
imagine that was the agenda, what they're pushing really in creating those films is, oh, we've got all this technology, let's see how real we can make this universe with all this technology. And therefore story, script, plot, casting all suffered. I think with their casting for Anakin, through my adult eyes and with the benefit of hindsight, it's almost as if they were trying to cast, you know, generic cute American boy number 4. If Macaulay Culkin hadn't have aged and was a lost boy in Never Neverland, they would have cast him direct from Home Alone. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think there was really any depth to, well, it's hard with a child actor anyway, but it was almost sort of like a whitewash perception. Here we've got our nice little American boy.
I don't think there was a budgeting issue. They spent loads of money on
no
actors.
Yeah,
I
of
just
course.
think-
I don't think it's
I
not
think-
budgeting at all. I just think it's.
You think there was a lineup and they
it's-
just went for the
Yeah.
cutest they could find?
Yeah, and
they
I
weren't too
also
bothered about how he
think
could act.
the agenda behind the films as well. I think obviously they're approaching those films with a different agenda, and that's why they are so very different to the original 3.
Well, let me tell you how layered that film is, right? That I didn't realise that there's a scene where Anakin goes in to tell his mum that he's going to be a Jedi Knight and he doesn't want to leave her, but obviously he knows he's got to. He feels it's his destiny, and he walks out, and right by like one of the igloo type buildings that they were, when he walks out, there's a shadow of him,
Yeah,
and the shadow is Darth Vader.
yeah.
Now
That's a nice touch. Yeah,
I never even saw that. Yeah, that was something that was pointed out on Facebook on one of these, look at this clever photography that you never even noticed. There was, I mean, when we get to the later prequels, there's also, visits by the Millennium Falcon in the original prequels, which just, I think, nicely stitches the old movies in, with the next sequence. I think they dropped a lot of Easter eggs.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they were tasteful Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Which brings us on to the
Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, terrible film.
Didn't enjoy it?
No, man. I mean, too much lovey-dovey between Anakin. I know it's the story and it's how he eventually fell. That he betrayed his principles, which I'm really hope that this new film is going to delve a little bit more into the fact that, the Jedi were actually not operating as Jedi as far as the Book of the Wills is concerned. Which is, for anybody that doesn't know, is like, the doctrine of the Jedi. It's their code. It's their original. Yeah,
I mean, I think anyone with like, assuming everyone's watched the original 3, you're just going on those. Your understanding or perception of what it is to be a Jedi and what it entails to be a Jedi, or their mission, or their emotional place where they're coming from. None of that would you imagine being like a political ambassador, a commander of a fucking clone army.
No.
None of that you would imagine being in the purview at all.
No, especially
any sort of political involvement or anything like that.
Especially when, in the later films, they talk about having to take over the Senate, to restore peace to the galaxy, and you're thinking, well, that's not Jedi thinking. That's bad.
Yeah.
You're talking about, you're talking about impeaching a chancellor and taking over the Senate, which is well, that's surely that goes against their code.
I think a sort of weird modern comparison would be if the Jedi Council is sort of like a government that is crippled by like extreme left hyper political correctness, where they can't move right, they can't move left, they can't move up, or they can't move down because it's going to be perceived as a wrong footing somewhere. Almost like,
so they can't do any right, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no right move. Whatever they do,
exactly, because they're trying to appease too many people across too wide a spectrum. Exactly that. and so they become this weird sort of bureaucracy and start taking on roles outside of how they're meant to be.
Yeah, which is, they, in doing this, in trying to sort of, be the good guys all the time, what they actually end up being is the very thing that they almost swore they would never become, which is power hungry, crazy.
Yeah, they become part of like the controlling institution.
Yeah,
instead of being a liberating force, they become a controlling force.
And asking Anakin to lie and spy and do all these sorts of things, which are against the Jedi code.
Yeah,
you could see it felt apparent by the time. I mean, we'll dust over Attack of the Clones. We just quickly. Yeah, terrible film. As far as I'm concerned, didn't enjoy it. The only thing I really enjoyed about it was Yoda's battle at the end. But, I gotta say it. Where has Yoda ever won a battle, man? Like, he has never won a battle. This guy's the apex motherfucker of the Jedi community. He cannot defeat Count Dooku. He can't. He didn't. He fought him. He couldn't defeat him. He didn't defeat Palpatine. He effectively lost ground to Palpatine and then went into exile. Like, I don't think he ever really kicked ass the way everyone expected him to, especially me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, maybe he was biting off more than he could chew. I think he did kick ass, and it was almost like a trope or a cliche to show him in this super ninja capacity when he was this frail old man. Like in the original
950 years old or whatever he was.
But then he's the weird Zen master, so in so much as your perception is that he's lost, maybe he's thinking 20 steps of the chessboard ahead, and those subtle, what seem like significant ground giving is laying up the chess pieces for events to happen. But maybe not. Maybe he, although he's an alien, but based on a human, so we assume human emotions, human reasoning, human rationale, so it's a character written by humans, so it's got identifiable traits. Maybe he is just fallible, and that's the whole point, in one of these ever encircling archetypes that sort of revolves around the story of Star Wars. He's the mythological father who is doomed to fail.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. I mean, I think, when at the end of the Attack of the Clones, which is the only bit of the film I really enjoyed, obviously I think there's some plot holes as far as Obi-Wan's skill sets are concerned, because he tends to have almost good days and bad days.
Yes, very hot and cold.
Like one day he'll go and, when he's fighting Count Dooku, he sort of swings his lightsaber 3 or 4 times and then gets his arm, gets wounded, and that's him done. And it was a similar story when he fought Count Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. But then when he fought General Grievous, who was widely considered in Star Wars canon to be a master of all forms of lightsaber battle, picks him apart quite easily, I thought.
Now, I'm not too sure on the intricacies of this, but so from a layman's perspective, I'm assuming General Grievous's abilities with the lightsaber are almost like, I would assume, are programmed doctrines like katas and martial arts, so he knows effective moves for battle and techniques, so he can wipe out lesser Jedis and take their lightsabers, but he's not actually wielding the Force. He's essentially like a boosted AI computer program with a biological core.
He's almost like an avatar type of character,
Yeah. But so when Obi-Wan, who obviously hot and cold days, we're assuming has some high enough grasp and understanding of the Force, against Grievous, wins, because he legitimately wields the Force, will be able to use that to predict his moves and counter him and find his weak spots. Whereas Dooku or whoever else, we're led to believe as a Sith is a Sith of greater power. So it isn't just a case of martial prowess when Obi-Wan comes up against him. It's a case of his knowledge of the Force. His extra senses, his sixth senses are clouded. He doesn't have those sort of spider senses to rely on, and therefore he's outclassed in that sort of.
It is there. The plot holes are there, because he then goes and fights Anakin for 15 minutes at the end, and for all intents and purposes beats him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anakin pulls Dooku apart very easily in front of the Chancellor, very easily. Almost in, 2 or 3 minutes of lightsaber battle, he pulls him apart.
But again, was that part of the plan, Dooku surrendering himself? Was that part of the dark side rider plan? But also, again, Obi-Wan is, in this situation, your Zen archetype. Just because he has the power to be extreme and wrathful and very powerful, just because he can go there, much like Gandalf throughout the Lord of the Rings, doesn't mean it's necessarily good for him to do that. Maybe he's got to practice those virtues of restraint and only ever try and use just enough force in the Star Wars sense and the literal sense, opposed to just annihilating everyone when he can, because he can.
Well, I think as well, what's been pointed out is that obviously the Emperor was witnessing this fight between Anakin and Dooku, and it said that the Emperor was able to weaken Dooku's powers during the lightsaber battle to enable Anakin to win. Obviously, because he wanted Anakin to become his new apprentice.
Some manipulation.
So there's a bit of work there, yeah. But I mean, you don't see these things in the film because they don't hint or suggest that they're there. Like just a quick pan over to the Emperor with a little scene where he maybe does some sort of action or motion, you'd pick that up and that'd be a point of discussion. But you have to go back to the Legends novels and the canon to really delve deep into these.
And I think that's part of the evolution of cinema and the Star Wars saga in itself. The original 3 in isolation, there are so many questions left unanswered and things you've just got to accept as given. Who is this mysterious Emperor? What the hell is his story? Do you know what I mean? You just have to accept it.
Well, you did. No, you did. You don't now because
yes, but that's the thing.
There's a lot more information out there
modern
now.
Cinema now has the convention of cramming it with everything, all the information, all the cookies, all the bits are in there, and there's less to be imagined because there's a demand for it. A film will get bad reviews if you have this random bad guy from nowhere that you've just got to accept on face value. So I feel. And there is a different cinematic style between those original 3 and then the prequels. Different audiences, different cinematic styles. And part of this developing millennial cinema is that you've got to answer more questions.
Agreed.
In the film. There's less room for these epic cliffhangers. But they still manage to have a few.
Yeah. And, bringing us on to Revenge of the Sith. What a film. What a film. Enjoyed every minute of it. Could see the darkness. I thought, and again, I'm going to give a shout out to Hayden Christensen because he come under a lot of fire. His career hit very, very difficult paths because he was typecast as, Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker, but I thought he played the part really well. I enjoyed watching it. You could see the struggle. I think he played that well. You could see the nastiness in him. You could really see, but it built very much, even from that first moment where he gets back from rescuing the Emperor and he looks at Padme when she tells him she's pregnant. He kind of got that look in his eye when he says, we're not going to worry right now. We're going to be happy. And you think, this guy is he's already like way down that path of becoming, the Dark Lord. I think
a lot of people's issue with that character in that film is they forget what it's like to be a young adult or an old teenager, just sort of crazy emotional highs and lows that you're going through. And because he's a character, he's meant to be the chosen one. He's a Jedi. He's off.
Well, he's under pressure.
Yeah, he's off doing these extraordinary things and normalizing these crazy adventures. You forget that at the heart of it, again, he's just a fallible human with these human flaws and human emotions. And so to see like these stroppy sort of teenage moods in your future Darth Vader seems really jarring, but isn't necessarily unrealistic of someone of that age with those pressures, regardless of what extraordinary abilities they might have otherwise. So I think that's taken for granted.
But yeah, really just thought the film built beautifully throughout the film.
Until it ended.
And so I apologise for my coughing. Only thing and you know, hardcore Star Wars fans out there now will know this moment. No.
Yeah.
What did they do getting Darth Vader to shout no? And in fact, in the new Darth Vader comics, they've retold that story, and he does not do that. He does in the comics, which are canon, and you know they are considered to be, correct as far as the story goes. They completely take that bit out. It showed a lot.
It was a big mistake, but the
mistake.
thing is, the trouble is, it's like fake news, isn't it? Once something's out there and people have accepted it in the wider mainstream, it's hard to break through with a truth or a rewrite or a correct version.
Of course. And do you know what? In the years to come, you might see like a different version of these films come out, like they did when they brought out Star Wars and Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, when they put all the extra bits in.
Yeah, and they might edit that out.
They might edit that out.
It would be smart to do that.
I think so. I do.
But
I think for me, when you saw that, the thing is the film builds beautifully on, almost killing off Anakin and giving birth to Darth Vader, and a lot of people, and me, what a big part of this, didn't know how much of a sinister character this man is, and what he's done, and the fact that he's essentially absolutely pissed off with himself and who he is and what he's become, and he lives in torture. The suit. There's wondrous videos out there. There's a guy that runs a YouTube channel, and it's called Star Wars Theory. And honestly, some of the stuff, this guy goes and picks out all bits from canon novels, and brings them all together for you, and you can learn an awful lot about the characters. And the one thing that I learned about Darth Vader is that when the Emperor came back and found him on Mustafar, and he was all cut up and burnt, essentially then the Emperor was kind of almost like, well, he's kind of nearly dead. He's just about surviving, so we'll take him back and see what we can make out of him. The suit was essentially designed to control him so that the Emperor knew his weak spots. The Emperor knew he could beat him. He could beat him easily if he tried to turn on him. The suit was designed to keep him in extreme pain, because pain fed his emotions, fed the dark side. It's what made him powerful. What the Emperor didn't realise is that Vader embraced the pain. He wasn't scared of it. He embraced it. That's why he set up his castle on Mustafar. He actually had his Bacta tank, which is where he goes to recover, overlooking the lava fields where he was bested by Obi-Wan.
I suppose because of his guilt and self-loathing, that he feels he's deserving of the
Padme,
pain, so then just welcomes it and goes, "This is my fate."
But this is the thing.
I deserve this.
The Emperor initially designed the suit as a form of control over him. What it ended up being was something massively more. It gave him unlimited power with the dark side, and it made him extremely strong. But obviously, because of his physical disconnection from the Force, because obviously he didn't have his own hands, his limbs were all cut and burnt off, so he wasn't able to utilise certain Force powers like Force lightning and things like that. And because of his electrical circuitry in his suit, he was very susceptible to the Force lightning, which the Emperor knew. So which that whole part comes together in the end of Return of the Jedi when he picks him up. And actually, if you watch the film on slow motion playback, when he lifts him up in the air, you can see the lightning bolts penetrate his helmet, and you can actually see his skull light up. And actually what happened was, when he picked him up, it was the lightning that killed him. The lightning penetrated his suit, it fried all the circuits in his suit, fried all his apparatus,
all his life support,
and that was eventually what killed him. But just delving a little bit into the history of this character. When you see him in Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which is where we first met him, you just don't feel anything. He's evil. He's just horrible. You love him because he's a brilliant baddie, but you take him for what he is. He's just horrible, evil, character. In the prequels, you then get to learn who he was when he was in a human form, and I think when you delve a little bit into his backstory, I mean, there's rumours. And again, these guys on YouTube, which I give a shout out to, they're fantastic. They do all the research. They got all the inside scoops on this sort of stuff. Darth Vader movie is definitely going to happen. It
needs to.
It's been confirmed.
Because they need to tie together the ice cold killer and the stroppy teenager, because that was people's main gripe with the Hayden Christian, Anakin, Darth Vader, is that it was jarring. They couldn't reconcile the two. But I mean, obviously, it's a progression. But that middle part where you see that stroppy teenager grow and fully embrace and learn who he is in terms of becoming that ice cold killer.
The thing is, they didn't have a lot of time to do that.
Yeah, but they could have done.
They wrapped the film
I think
up.
that's what people expected more of.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They wrapped the film up very quickly. I mean, the parts where he went from turning evil to becoming Darth Vader was actually only about 10 to 15 minutes of the film. 10 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
So they had a 2-hour, 45-minute film, and they spent 10 minutes turning Anakin from basically, like you say, this stroppy young man into the killer that is Darth Vader. But the thing is that between Revenge of the Sith and Star Wars is 30 years. 30 years, I believe. And the thing is, when you see him in Star Wars, he's just ruined. He's ruined by the dark side. He's completely evil. There's nothing left. He's out and out a bad person. He's a bad man. But they could do well to revisit that time period between Revenge of the Sith and Star Wars, which brings us neatly onto Rogue One, because we get to see a little bit of what Darth Vader was actually like.
Yeah,
between the two films.
That was calculated because they needed to redeem his cold, hard, badass killer self after that ending scene where he screams no.
Yeah.
And they did it in style.
That was... I've watched that scene back where he goes absolutely spastic.
Just goes murderizes.
And starts murderizing, throwing people with the Force and lightsaber, slicing people up.
But again, I mean, that's a new side we've seen as well. In that scene, it's unbridled wrath. There's no restraint. Where all the cold, hard killer scenes we've seen in Darth Vader before are exactly that. They're cold and they're calculated and they're restrained. There's none of this fucking outright brutalizing. And there you get to see him on the go, off the leash, having some fun.
Yeah. And I think just that scene, where he's just absolutely massacring those rebellion soldiers. I think there was a lot of people that spoke about, obviously his prowess then with a lightsaber and his ability with the Force, and said, well, this was not that far before Star Wars. And when you watch him fight in Star Wars, he seems to be a bit limited. When you see that fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi, he seems to be a bit limited. I think what people forget is that Rogue One was done 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And Star Wars was done, 1979, I believe it was, 78, 77.
Obviously there was creative limitations.
41 years, man.
But you can explain them away with plot and agenda, and
well, they've said that it's his suit, that obviously he goes through a lot of iterations of his suit. There are certain things he puts on his suit, restrictive armor that he's got on his shoulders, which restrict his ability to lift his hand above his shoulder, which can then restrict his fighting styles. And
not only that, so okay, he meets Obi-Wan for the first time in a long time. It's an emotional re-encounter. He's probably sensing Luke to some degree. He's exploring that situation mentally with his powers. He's not just there to wipe the floor with him. And then he does when Obi-Wan concedes. So you can there you go. I've just explained it away. That doesn't need to be canon, but it can easily be explained away. And again, when he is fighting Luke, the two times he does fight him, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, his agenda isn't just to wipe the floor with Luke.
It's not at all.
So
it's not at all. It's to test him.
Yeah, and you're not going to see that same sort of fighting style.
No, I mean it's widely understood in canon that when he fights him in The Empire Strikes Back, he's really. He's looking there. He's looking at what Luke is capable of, which then leads up to this amazing cinema moment where he tells him that obviously he's his dad, which I wasn't expecting that. And I watched that scene back now, and I go, my God, that's the most amazing bit of film.
I mean,
it's fantastic.
It is weird, like looking back on reflection, how many sort of TV tropes are stemmed from Star Wars. And now you might like half write the scenes off in your mind, going, yeah, it's just a trope, it's just a cliche or whatever. But it was the original. Do you know what I mean? So that is a big.
It was
deal.
the original cliffhanger, man.
Yeah.
It was the original part where everyone went, "What? You're what?" It was thrown out there. It was just fantastic. So, I think Rogue One. I know you really like the film. I really like the film.
Okay, so just quickly, the prequels, their cinematic style differed so different from the original three. The original three had a bit of grit to them, and the prequels were very slapstick. Legions of killer robots, that's scary. Legions of killer robots that make silly noises and trip over their feet and shoot their comrades and stuff destroys the illusion. For me, that's a real issue that I had. It's the same Jar Jar Binks with a slapstick character. There was too much slapstick stuff going on to get in the way of my immersion.
It diluted the grittiness. It diluted the fear that they should have been
Rogue
feeling.
One had that original combination, that same combination of grittiness and a bit of humour that is in the original three films. It was the perfect blending of those, and it is what I feel Force Awakens, was that the last new one? Should have been. For me, and Anthony's shooting me daggers now because he disagrees vehemently, but the cinematic style of that film goes back to too much slapstick and none of these subtle cookies, but really obvious ham-fisted cookies. And then instead of using it as an opportunity to generate a new plot and expand the world, they've just rehashed the same plot with new characters. So that film really disappointed me. Rogue One was everything that film should have been.
Oh. Okay. As I said at the start, the whole point of Star Wars is it's a retelling of the same story over and over again. And what you've got to remember is that, the chosen one, it's a myth. There's no chosen one. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is it's about balance. But nobody gets to decide where the balance is. The balance is the balance. The Force decides. No one else decides. The chosen one wasn't the chosen one. When they were talking in the prequels about the chosen one, like, what happened? They brought balance to the Force. Of course they did. The Sith weren't around. The Jedi were in control. The balance was that the Jedi had too much power. They didn't realise that. So the chosen one actually brought balance to the Force by wiping out the Jedi and putting the Sith back in control.
I don't disagree with that. What I'm talking about is like lazy plot writing. So, okay, here's your plot. Orphan child, stranded on desert planet, finds a robot with plans on, hooks up with bounty hunters, smugglers, takes these plans to where they need to go. It's a giant planet killing thing and they blow it up. That is what I'm talking about, is a complete rehash.
It's not a
do you
rehash.
Do you know what I mean? Rogue One was a new storyline with a new plot, with a new crew. You could have done the same story with old friendly familiar faces, and it still would have been a good plot.
Right. This is where I think you're getting it wrong. Rogue One, if you imagine a timeline, if you draw a line on a piece of paper, and each one of those, and draw circles on the line, each one of them circles is a film in the Skywalker saga.
None of that matters between good cinema and
You're
good
talking
storytelling.
you're talking about what is effectively another film which has got absolutely nothing to do.
I'm talking about
with the original
cinematic
film.
style.
I get that.
Okay.
Rogue One was nothing to do with
plot.
But Rogue One was nothing to do with the original trilogy.
So Force Awakens, they go into the Millennium Falcon and you see that chessboard from the original films. There's a nice little cookie. They hang around looking at that chessboard for a fucking minute. All right, we got the hint. Unnecessary. They then got that comical...
It's not unnecessary. It's nostalgic. It's bringing you back to your childhood. Fucking
then
hell.
they
Seriously,
no.
it's enjoyable.
I've got
man.
nothing wrong with the cookie. That's good. My point is the fact that it was it wasn't a, oh shit, look, there's the cookie. It's a, hey, look at the cookie. Look at the cookie. It's here. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, no,
It loses the finesse of it. And then when they find Han Solo and Chewbacca, and there's the two lots of bounty hunters are after them, and there's that comical fucking spaghetti alien that miraculously saves them so they can escape in the Millennium Falcon. Too slapstick, like the prequels, ruins the immersion. But then also in terms of literal plotline, Luke, orphan, stranded on a planet, finds some robots, desert planet, finds some robots, goes to the markets, robots have plans on, finds some bounty hunters, escape. Force Awakens, girl, orphan, desert planet, finds the robots with the plans, finds some bounty hunters or whatever, escapes.
No.
It's a total one-for-one
It's not.
rehash.
No, there's subtle differences. in
Yeah,
there.
that's the point. It's subtle differences.
Yeah, but
if you've
no, hold on, let me speak.
I get the retelling of the storyline for a new generation that aren't necessarily going to see the whole.
But what would
films.
you? How can you continue to film them? What would you have done?
Come up with a new storyline?
Like what? Like the whole
Like
point is
anything.
it's about creating new characters. So you've got to have young people.
Yes.
You can't get away from that.
I've not said you can't get away from that.
But you
Why-
can't have
why not?
you can't have a young girl who's rich, lives on a planet where she's got loads of money.
Why
it doesn't
not?
work.
Why not?
It doesn't work.
Why not?
Because it's not fun.
Why not?
Because she's a sport little bitch who doesn't deserve to
Well,
be
that's
a Jedi.
Princess Leia. That's Princess Leia. Do you know what I mean? She was raised as a princess.
Do you know what? We could spend 45 minutes just arguing about this. I knew this was going to happen, but seriously, I think on this occasion, I would have to say you are wide off the mark, man.
Dunno.
But I'll accept your point. But I do think that you're missing the point of the fact that, yes, it is a retelling of a story. Yes, I agree. There are a lot of similarities. You would say, oh, they're exactly the same. I don't believe they're exactly the same. I'd say there's a lot of similarities. But what I would say is that it's a, if you look at it as a never evolving scenario of good versus evil, then it's a perfect film. It worked. Everything about it was great. There was enough retro stuff in there, like the Millennium Falcon, Princess Leia. Okay, the acting wasn't great between Leia and Han Solo, and I agree with that. And I agree that I don't think Harrison Ford done a brilliant job of that film. I will agree. No, don't. Chewbacca was great. But then all he ever does is go, "Rah." That's about it. Do you know what I mean? But I do think Han Solo didn't do very well. Loved the bit when he died. Thought it was fantastic. Absolutely worked a treat for me. Kylo Ren, perfect. Daisy Ridley, perfect. John Boyega, perfect. Poe Dameron, Oscar Isaacs, perfect. Really enjoyed the film. Absolutely thought it was brilliant. Just it fed into. I agree what you said about Luke, but I think when you see this film, it's your perception of The Force Awakens might change. You might go, fuck, I was expecting to go into, what happens in Empire Strikes Back? Well, they're all found on a desert planet. Then they're attacked by the First Order. Then Daisy Ridley
what
then
happens,
goes off and
Luke goes to a swamp planet to train as a Jedi. Just like your woman's going off to Luke on his isolated planet to train as a Jedi. Yeah, I get for, philosophical reasons to do with the cyclical effects of the Force that you want to draw some parallels and similarities. But, right.
This is where, right, let me jump in. This film is important. It's important because it is going to change your perception. What you think you're going to watch tonight is a rehash telling of The Empire Strikes Back. That's what you're thinking you're going to go and see.
Look, I'm really hopeful for this film. I'm really going to enjoy it. I enjoyed all of them for different reasons. Hindsight, I don't like the prequels because they're too slapstick. I thought there was too much of that in The Force Awakens. I think there's going to be some of that in this film as well that I'm going to dread. There wasn't too much of that in Rogue One. They struck the balance well in Rogue One. That was a hit. I am disappointed in the rehashing of the plot lines because the prequels were, even though had their flaws, were new stories with new plots. And I think there should have been new stories and new plots instead of, putting a different coat on something that's already existing. Either way, I'm going to enjoy it. Anyway, the point is tonight we're going to go watch it. We're watching a midnight viewing, and that's stimulated this awesome debate. So if you've bothered to listen to this, let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
And what side you're on and your opinions. And then we're going to do a sort of another Star Wars edition for episode 3, where we're going to recap on what we think, having watched the new film.
And then maybe talk about, where the film's going to go, what the next part of the film's going to look like. So, but we're not, obviously we're not going to turn this into a Star Wars podcast channel. But,
it's just, to be honest, it's just topical. It's topical, it's a bit of fun. We're going to watch it and we're sharing that with you. So share your opinions with us. Peace out, bitches. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think what we're going to say is that we're about half an hour away from the showing. So we'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you did, please leave us a like and subscribe on the channel. You can now find us on YouTube under the Mancast Sessions, where we'll be uploading some content as well. We urge you to go and look and do your own research on this subject. There is masses of information out there, and it's absolutely fascinating to read. So until the next time, we'll see you again soon.